Was that a point? Okay. You did this.
Now you're ready.
All right. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday to you. Welcome to Table Talk with Jonathan Harmon of the J. Harmon Home Team, powered by Keller Williams. And I've got a really cool guy on, and I'm going to tell you more about him here in just a minute. But first, we got to do a little business. My buddy Brian Nail, if you haven't heard the news yet, he's the best mortgage lender in Rutherford County. It is actually scientifically proven. I've got the study to show it. I found it in the Inquirer. So, it's got to be true, right? And it was on the internet. Yeah. So, best mortgage lender in Rutherford County. He is my favorite mortgage lender, that's for sure. But also he supports all things Spread the Positive, including this show and several other things as well. So, if you need a mortgage, hit Brian Nail up with Iberia Bank Mortgage, a division of First Horizon.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Love you, man. And I got my buddy, producer Trent, back
sir.
behind the camera. How's it going?
Super duper. Pumped to be here.
Have you had a good week?
I've had a great week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a good podcast yesterday. That was good.
Can I plug something real quick?
Yeah, of course.
100,000 downloads.
What?
We officially crossed the 6-figure mark on STP Productions, man. So feeling good, man. That gives me,
that's a big number, dude.
It is, man. 6 figures. We've been in 2, 3, 4, 5 for a really long time, and now 6. So pumped, man. Pumped. So y'all get involved.
That's right.
That's my plug, man. We got some cool stuff happening, and obviously the numbers are there. Like, we got a pretty steady flow of greatness that comes out of this place.
That's right. So Chief, if just to kind of catch you up, Spread the Positive is a kind of a podcasting network that Trent has here. What are we at? 31 podcasts?
Yep.
31-ish.
More, obviously more. Some are more active than others, but 31 on the roster.
And he's got them all kind of archived, and he broadcasts them out to different platforms. And so we just crossed 100,000 downloads. That's a
big deal, man.
That's tremendous.
That's
tremendous.
I'm pretty.
And
when I saw the first time this morning, it was 100,037. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Oh, you missed all the zeros.
I missed all the zeros,
man. Yeah. If you can undownload those 37 other people, that'd be great. So you can get a picture.
Almost at 101. So no, I'm not going to reverse anything.
Yeah. But basically, it exists to
bring light to what's going right.
Bring light. I always want to say shed the light.
Shed light. Same thing.
Bring light to what's going right in the world. So I know in your line of work, sometimes you need a little good news.
That is very true. Very true.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, so good stuff. Hey, and one more thing real quick is the 2/22/22
next
event.
Week, a week from today, Cedar Glade, be here.
That's right. Tuesday at what time?
6 to 8.
6 to 8. We're going to talk about Spread the Positive. Do a little meet and greet, do a little mix and mingle. We're going to have some good beer. It's going to be great.
Yes. And you're going to be running all over the place. So thank you to you.
No, sir. I'm going to be right behind the bar slinging beer. It's going to be great.
Well, grateful for you. Thank you for letting us do it. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be awesome. So, all right, without further ado, my friend Chief Kevin Arnold of the Smyrna Police Department.
Yeah, the crowd roars.
Absolutely. So, Chief, we've known each other for a long time. You've known my parents for an even longer time. And you, in my opinion, I mean this and absolutely as a compliment, you do not fit in my brain what I picture the police chief to be. You are extremely visible in the community, extremely active in the community, just a generally nice dude, very extremely level-headed. I mean, like, You're not what the media portrays you to be.
My parents
not
did a
you
good
specifically,
job.
but you know what I mean?
No, I get it. And that it's very important, in my opinion, for the chief of police of any community to be seen in their community, and at the same time to be heard in various ways, but at the same time not be a source of contention.
Yes.
So I learned over the years, and this was something that I told a former sheriff of ours who, unfortunately for him, had to serve a little time in federal prison.
Bless his heart.
Yeah. And but I told him one day, because he was in the media a lot. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, look, I'm just going to give you a piece of advice. There is state law that says that we have to share certain information. We have to give them reports. We have to give them videos and a variety of other things. but there is nothing in state law that says we have to comment. So sometimes the best piece of advice is just let the report do the talking for itself. But at the same time, going back to what you originally said, and thank you very much for that, I try to attend as many of the community events that I can. There's certain ones that I don't attend strictly from the standpoint of conflicts or whatever, but I try to get to all of them as much as I can. But Smyrna is a great community to be in. It's a great community to raise a family in my opinion. I mean,
I agree.
Lynn and I were very lucky, which Lynn is my wife, and we're very lucky in that both of our kids have turned into decent people, and we're very lucky for that. And they've given us two fantastic grandkids that I get to spoil and do all that kind of stuff with. But
well, based on what I know, you might actually like your grandkids more than your kids.
Well, depends on the occasion. So, but no, they're my kids. I mean, Courtney is a teacher at Stewart Creek Elementary. I'm very proud of her, work and what she's doing. She teaches special needs kids, and that's a tremendously hard job. And she does a tremendous job of that. Chris is a fireman with Laverne Fire Department. He's a lieutenant there. He's busted his butt and rose up in the ranks. And so Lynn and I are very lucky. We have good kids. And I don't deserve any of the credit. She deserves it all. So,
well, I think what my favorite thing about everything that you just said, Smyrna is a great town. And, you know, I grew up in Smyrna. I live in Murfreesboro now. Went to MTSU. I lived in Atlanta for a year, just outside of Atlanta. So, I mean, I haven't been in a lot of places, but Smyrna's special. And, you know, obviously it's special to me is where I grew up. It's where my roots are, but there's still just something about it. It is retained even with what are we at now? 48,000, 50,000.
I think the last census came out, we were either 53,000 or 56,000.
Okay. So even higher.
Yeah. So it's even higher. Yeah.
But it feels very much like a small town. So when you show when you show up to depot days, you know, there's police officers there and they're playing and having a good time with people. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to boat day or you go to whatever, you know, Officer Potts is right there. You know, Chief Arnold is right here. Andy Miller, love him. You know, he's somewhere around.
Exactly.
You can hear him. Might not be able to see him.
Yeah.
But you guys just do the police force in Smyrna does a great job of still maintaining that small town atmosphere. But simultaneously, when the stuff hits the fan, you guys take care of business too.
Well, we do. And again, I mean, you know, of course you train for the catastrophic type events and the major crime scenes and things of that nature. But at the same time, going back to like depot days and Simply Smyrna and these community type events that we have, one thing that I stress to all of the officers, and they're very good about it, but I'm like, I don't want to see you stand over in the corner with your arms folded. Interact with the people, get to know these people, because eventually one thing that I tell them about is that eventually you're going to need their services. One day you're going to be getting a call of, say, for example, a shot's fired in a neighborhood, and you get there. And if you interacted with people on a positive note and you develop that relationship, they are going to pay you back by giving you information.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you, this is what I saw. Yeah, exactly. This is what I saw. This is what I heard. But if you have an attitude with them and then you go up to them and say, hey, did you hear or see anything? The response you get is, I didn't see nothing.
Yeah. Get out of my face, Jack.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and again, one thing I'll stress is, and I've been doing this job since 1979, not as the chief, but in law enforcement work. And it has evolved so much, in my opinion, that again, 95 to 99% of the officers that are working out there today are doing it for the right reason.
Sure.
They're doing it to serve their community. They're not going to get rich. They're going to make a decent living. They're going to be able to provide for their family, all that kind of thing. But they're doing it for the right reason.
Well, they actually make a difference in a community when they do it the right way.
That's entirely correct.
And I think that's kind of what I was driving at, is that you don't just preach at them to do it the right way. You show them how, and you encourage that good behavior, and that's important. I mean, they absolutely reflect leadership, and I think that's great.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you.
Not just you, but your lieutenants and several others as well.
Exactly.
Tell me your story. How did you get into law enforcement? Why in the world did you get into law enforcement?
Yeah.
And then I'd love to transition that into some of the things that have changed from your perspective.
Of course, when I was 16 years old, it was getting close to time to make a decision. What am I? Where am I going to go to college? What am I going to study? What am I going to do with my life, per se? And again, I'm not stressing that every 16-year-old out there needs to be that serious about their future. But my parents took us to the White House. And this was 1976. So it's the bicentennial year.
Yeah.
And so we're visiting Philadelphia and seeing the Liberty Bell, and we're going to DC and seeing all the monuments and the Smithsonian and all that stuff. Well, back in those days, of course, it's way before 9/11, you could actually get tickets to the White House.
Right.
And they would give you a guided tour of the White House. And so my father got with Senator Howard Baker, who's long dead to gone, but got with him and got tickets to the White House. And so we went in, and a Secret Service agent was our tour guide. Now, this guy was like the coolest dude I'd ever seen in my life. And I was just like, I was so impressed with him that I remember when we left there and we got in, my parents had a big van. And when we got in the van to go back to our hotel room, I told my father, I said, I want to be that guy. I want to do what that guy's doing. I want to be a Secret Service agent. So in turn, my parents had a rule back in those days, because they'd seen so many kids go out to college and just get hog wild and be kicked out of college in a year.
Sure.
So growing up in Livingston, where I grew up, my parents made us go to Tennessee Tech for a year, and we had to drive back and forth. And Tech did not have a criminal justice program at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And there were only 2 universities in the state that did at that time, and it was Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee. And I'd been to Murfreesboro several times for basketball tournaments and some things like that. I had never been to Johnson City. In fact, to this day, I've only been there once. But I knew a little bit about Murfreesboro. I knew how to get around and all that. So after my mandatory 1 year of Tech,
your test year.
Yeah, exactly. I transferred to Murfreesboro and to Middle Tennessee State. And one day I was in the criminal justice office, and I was talking to an instructor or someone, and I saw this sign from the Secret Service saying, "Hey, we're hiring." And I'm looking at the qualifications, and it said, you cannot have glasses.
Nope.
You cannot have corrective vision. So I knew I was out. But I'd gotten a job with the MTSU Police Department, started as the library guard. And so every night, my job was to walk the librarians out to their car and make sure they got in their car safe. And I would work about 4 hours in the library and, tell people to be quiet and things like that. And
did they give you a sash? I mean, that's
no,
basically
it wasn't like a hall monitor. I mean, I actually wore a uniform. I did not carry a gun. I didn't carry a nightstick or mace or whatever. But and then eventually transitioned to what's known as student patrol,
mm-hmm.
which back in those days, it was a part-time position, and you walked a beat and you locked up buildings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I was able to get a job with Rutherford County Sheriff's Office, started as a jailer. From jailer, went to deputy. And I went through the police academy in 1983. And so from that, I transitioned into narcotics, and I worked narcotics for 4 years there. Did a little bit of undercover, but most of what we did involved informants and search warrants, and it's called Carroll Doctrine stops, which is basically where you stop a car that you have information has narcotics or something in it, and then you can search it. And then from that, I transitioned into general detective, and worked a few cases, including a couple of homicides and some things of that nature. And one day I was in court, and I was talking to two Smyrna officers and a Murfreesboro officer. And basically we were comparing what we made. and I was the lowest paid of the 4, and I was a detective and had been there for almost 8 years. And so the guys from Smyrna told me how much they were making at the time, and I said, hey, for that, I can write a ticket, because back in those days, Smyrna was known as a speed trap.
Yes.
And it was well deserved. I can tell you right now from experience.
All right. So pause for a second.
Okay.
Do you have quotas?
No, you're first off, you cannot by state law. Second off, what we did was basically we had to keep up. We had a sheet that we had to fill out, and you had to keep up with the calls you went on. Of course, this is before computers. You had to fill it out, tell what you went to, but you also had to tell how many tickets you wrote. And if you didn't write any tickets, you had to write an excuse to the chief.
Okay.
I didn't write any tickets because I was extremely busy, or back in those days, sometimes if it was raining really, really heavy, it would mess with the radar and you couldn't get good readings per se, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway,
so no quotas, but an accountability.
Yeah. I mean, which to an extent we have that now.
Sure.
I mean, we tell the officers, look, you've got to be proactive. The citizens expect it of you.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I got a job with Smyrna as patrol officer in 1989, and worked that for about 3 years. And then they promoted me into detectives, and worked that for about 3 years. And then got promoted to administration. I became a major, later became assistant chief. And then in 2007, they promoted me to chief. And
it's only been 07. I didn't realize it.
Almost 15. March 27th will be 15 years.
That's awesome. So what are some, and I mean, I know everybody watches the media, or, hears and sees and whatever. What are the things, in your opinion, in two different directions with this, what are the biggest problems like real problems from a police officer that face law enforcement today? And then more specifically, what are the biggest problems that face officers in Smyrna and Rutherford County?
Well, and for that matter, I think the number one thing that's going on with police departments right now is the recruitment and retention of officers. Mm-hmm. Years ago, if I posted saying I've got an opening, come apply, I would have 125 to 150 applicants
for one job.
Mm-hmm. Today, for 10 openings, I'll have 30 applicants, and out of that 30, 15 of them won't show. And then out of that 15, 5 of them won't pass the test. And out of that 10, 5 of them won't pass the background. So it's just very, very difficult right now to find people to do this job. And a lot of it has to do with, I don't know what's going on in our country, but the power is in the hand of that employee to an extent, because everybody's hiring. Mm-hmm. Everybody's hiring. Chewy's is hiring.
Sure. We're hiring our first employees at Cedar Glade.
Exactly. Everybody's hiring.
Yeah.
So in turn, the employee can pick and choose.
Yeah.
They can say, well, I don't like that schedule. I don't want to work that kind of shift. I only want to work these many days, things like that. And so with law enforcement, it's just very difficult, because, I mean, I've got to have people there every day.
All day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at 5 o'clock, I don't get to lock the doors and go home.
Right.
So that's a difficult thing, but I think one thing that's going on with law enforcement right now is, unfortunately, law enforcement is under such a microscope that we have a tendency to be our own worst enemy. And when people are watching you and things like that, and you make the mistakes that you're making, then in turn, it just gives all of us a bad name, because there's millions of interactions. I don't know about daily, but at least weekly, of law enforcement with the public.
Mm-hmm. And I would say daily. I mean, you think about 360 million people in the country.
And I mean, New York City has 22,000 police officers, something
mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of them are handled properly and all that. And so the sad part about it is it does wear on these officers. And one thing that we're trying to do now is devote more attention to their mental health. Officer wellness, as they call it, is a very important thing nowadays. Where, when I was a young officer and I dealt with a traumatic death scene or something to that effect, or God forbid, the death of a child, you went home and you had a six pack,
Mhm.
you know, or
You just dealt with it.
You just dealt with it. I mean, you didn't go seek counseling and all this. And one thing that we try to do, and I hope that we're doing this as much as we can, is that when officers do have these traumatic scenes, we're immediately sending peer counselors to them. And then in turn, we're talking to them and getting them to open up and talk some more. And at the same time, offering them, not making it mandatory, but offering them the assistance of professional counselors. And it's paid for by the town, and they don't have to pay anything out of pocket, things of that nature.
I think
Now
part
we
of it,
do require them, if they're involved in a shooting situation, we do require them to go to the counselor.
and I think part of that, part of the success of that is going to rely on how the peers view the process. So, in other words, you know, you just said this. If I, when I started, if I did, you know, whatever, I just went home and dealt with it, right?
Yeah.
And there's always, to some extent, I mean, let's face it, y'all's job is hard. It is hard.
It is.
And you've got to have a certain amount of confidence. You've got to have a certain amount of bravery. You've got to have a certain amount of all that stuff. And historically, that doesn't fit with talking to a counselor.
No.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Right or wrong, it just,
Mhm.
they just don't go together
Yeah.
a lot of times. And so how do you get your officers to say, no, not only is it okay for me to talk to a counselor, but I probably need to do this?
Well, I think one thing that is in our corner right now is these younger officers see the value of that.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, the old guys like me, you know, we weren't about to go talk to a counselor for two reasons. Number one, it showed some form of weakness. But number two was the fear that the department would come back on you and say, oh, he's gone mental. We need to do a fitness for duty, things of that nature.
Sure.
And now the department, or at least our department, we encourage them. And like I said, we don't make it mandatory unless it's a shooting situation. And then we're like, no, you're going. You don't have a choice. You're going to go talk to this guy. And I still remember, if you remember, and I was interim chief, so probably about February of 2007, we received a call at Executive House Apartments, which is right there beside Town Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentleman had called in and said that his a relative of his was making bombs in there. And so officers responded, and Officer Luke Naylor at the time, who's not an officer anymore, and Luke, in fact, I think Luke's involved in real estate. But anyway, Luke Naylor was the officer at the time, and he actually had Paul Lamb riding with him for Leadership Rutherford.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Naylor walked into the lobby of Executive House, and the bomb maker actually walked around the corner and had a gun in his waistband. And Luke, in turn, had to engage this guy and shot him and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, he had all kinds of bomb making materials in his apartment, and it would have leveled Executive House and probably half of Town Hall if it had gone off.
Sure.
But we made Luke go. And I don't mind saying this because I give all the credit to Luke, is that Luke at the time did not want to go. He said, nope, I'm fine. I don't need this. But Luke in turn reached back out to me afterward and thanked me and said, matter of fact, I'm going to go back a few times. And
Yeah.
I said, you go as often as you need to and want to.
I mean, it makes sense. You know, if you hurt yourself physically, you go do therapy. You know, if you want to keep your car running, you do tune-ups on it.
Yes.
Why would you not tune up your brain when you see something that is painful? It hurts.
Yes. And there, you know, and there are things. I mean, I remember a young officer who had resigned and was in like his last 2 weeks of employment, but he worked as a crime scene officer for us. And there was a suicide. And he got there and told the investigating detective, look, I'm going to work this, but I'm not going to go around the body. I've got enough in my head right now. And so, you know, that's why we continue to pound on these guys and ladies saying, look, go talk to people. And that's why that, you know, I've got Shirley Key, Don Godby, Steve Martin. I've got several that are trained on peer counseling And that's why when we have these traumatic events like that, one of the first things we do is we try to organize a defusing and then later on a debriefing and give them the opportunity to voice their concerns or issues that they may be having.
How much of the problems with law enforcement that we have right now are more in our country are more a result of so I guess let me back up and frame my question. Is the problem more that we have a 24-hour news cycle that picks things and harps on them, or are there more incidences now than because I mean, growing up, I remember Rodney King. I remember like maybe two other incidences ever, you
Yep.
know, and now it seems like there's incidences all the time, right? And to your point, there's millions and millions and millions of interactions.
Yes.
And so the percentage is probably not different.
No, but and again, a lot of what I'm about to say is strictly my opinion.
That's what I want.
I don't know that I have the data to back me up, but anyway.
Sure.
But for example, I mean, just go back to Rodney King. That was probably one of the first times ever that something was videotaped.
24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
It was
And
on
so
constantly.
Today, you and I both have the power to record an interaction and to divulge that within seconds out to everyone. And I think one of the issues we have is, God forbid, a media gets a piece of a video, and instead of running the entire video, they just run a portion of it.
This much out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it taints what that video is actually showing. Do I think that the media have a tendency to jump on us? Yeah, I do. And again, I'm defensive of my profession. But you know what? The media has a role to play as well. And I go back to there was a chief by the name of Charles Ramsey, who's still alive. I should say it like that. But he was the chief of Philadelphia at one point and the chief of Washington, D.C. And he made a statement about the media. And he said, you have to feed them every once in a while, because if you don't, they're going to be like a pack of wild dogs and get in your trash. And that's true. But I believe that in this democracy that we have to have the media. But at the same time, I want responsible journalism. And so what drives my wife insane is when we're sitting there on the couch watching the news, and I feel like that they're tainting it with their opinion.
Spinning it.
Yeah. And then in turn, I get to screaming at the television, and she in turn gets to screaming at me. So it makes for a lovely home. But anyway, but yeah, it just, I think sometimes that things are blown out of proportion before the full story is heard. But it's easy. I mean, you see a snippet of a video and immediately you form an opinion.
And that's just human. I mean, you can't
it
help
is.
that.
It's just, and I do it too. I do it just as well as anybody else.
Yeah. So I have a friend, dear friend of mine, and he and I were talking one day, and he happens to be a black man, and that plays into the story. In that, I asked him, I said, so, we were talking specifically about what we were just talking about, and he said, he's my age, and he said, I have never once had a positive interaction with a police officer, not one time in my entire life. And he said the closest that I ever came to that, he's a wrestling coach. He said the closest I ever came to that was I got pulled over by a state trooper, and when the trooper walked up, started giving attitude, I handed him my ID, and it just so happens that I had coached against him, and he remembered me, and all of a sudden his demeanor changed. He said that's the only time I've ever had a positive interaction with a police officer. And he didn't grow up in Smyrna, just so you know.
Yeah.
He grew up in Metro, and so my question to him, and I'd love to hear kind of your take on this, is why is that? Why do you think that you've never had a positive interaction? And is there some self-fulfilling prophecy to that? Is there like what is that? What has happened there where that's an even, because he's the nicest dude I've ever met in my life. I love the guy.
And again, I mean, without knowing him, I don't know what the circumstances of all his interactions were. It does make me sad and I mean that sincerely, that's been his interactions. I think one thing that, especially when all the stuff with George Floyd happened and all that, I remember meeting with a prominent member of our town, African American, who informed me, I'm scared of law enforcement.
Sure.
And so
and I've heard that a bunch, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing.
And the main thing I tried to stop that or give her more comfort was to let her know that under no circumstances was any member of that department going to be allowed to mistreat someone. That if that happened, they were going to face disciplinary action up to termination and may even face prosecution.
Sure.
That depended upon the circumstances of what it was. And so one thing that we've done at Smyrna is we are the first department in Rutherford County to have body cameras.
Mm-hmm. On every officer.
Every single patrol officer wears a body cam.
Mm-hmm.
Even the warrants guys who are working in court wear a body cam.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I like about it is that the officers wanted them. They couldn't wait to get them on because, and Jonathan, I go back to 1997 or whenever it was that we first put cameras into the cars, and show you how long ago it was. It was VHS tapes, and the officers absolutely came unglued. They thought that all we were doing was trying to catch them messing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept trying to tell them, look, this is just to save you. It's more about evidence and your protection than it is anything else. And so to show you how the officers have evolved and, in my opinion, become smarter, is the ones now want that body cam.
Mm-hmm.
So again, to go back to what your friend said, I think that if I had the opportunity to sit down and talk to him, is that number one, don't accept it. Here's the deal. If you're mistreated by an officer, you have every right as a citizen to contact that supervisor and say, I was mistreated. And again, let me, and I hope
there's
I'm
a
not
balance, right?
Well, there is. And at the same time, if you're getting a ticket, and I've heard it from people, I was spoken with so harshly and
you were also doing 25 over the speed limit.
And then you go back and you watch the video and the officer practically told you how to get out of the ticket.
Yeah.
So again, it's about perception, but
sure.
I encourage any citizen, whether it's in Metro Nashville or Smyrna, Murfreesboro or Woodbury, wherever it's at, if you're mistreated by an officer, contact that supervisor and say, look, I want to make a complaint. Strictly from the standpoint, we can't allow officers to mistreat our citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, if that supervisor goes and watches video and does all that stuff and interviews people, and it comes back and he says, I don't see anything wrong with what this individual did.
Mm-hmm.
He is following our policies and practices, and he was not rude. He did not use abusive language, things of that nature. Then you're going to have to accept that it's not going anywhere.
Sure.
I mean, you always have the option of getting an attorney and suing, but good luck with that.
Right.
If we started suing everybody sometime after we got harshly spoken with, the courts would be filled up with lawsuits.
My goodness.
Yeah. But
yeah,
again, I just encourage people to contact their supervisors strictly from the standpoint, we need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my guys have, and I say guys and ladies, they have around in the nature of 250 to 300 calls a day.
Each?
So yeah, well, no, not each.
Oh,
no, that's the entire.
Holy moly!
No, that's the entire. No, that'd be quitting in
Good
droves.
Lord.
No, that's the entire department. But I don't sit there and monitor every call. I don't,
Right.
I don't come in the next morning and watch every single video of interactions. So the only way I'm going to know if one of my people is doing things they shouldn't be doing or acting the way they shouldn't be doing is for someone to tell me.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, the proliferation of cell phones, body cameras, et cetera, has given that extra layer of accountability. So, if Officer A is harassing me in a public place, there's a really good chance that I might not even have to tell you.
That's right. And at the same time, hopefully that supervisor has done their work and they have documented the other times that this individual has mistreated citizens. And in turn, this may be the one needed to be able to get that guy out of that job.
Yeah.
One thing is I can honestly say that at Smyrna is we're not looking to hang the officers. Now, there's certain things they can do that if they do that, they're getting fired. Period.
Sure.
Commit a crime, things of that nature. But we try to do progressive discipline with counselings and with write-ups and with suspensions and things of that nature before they ever get fired. But if this individual has done this numerous times, this may be the option the opportunity for that supervisor or that chief to show this guy the door.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's true. The one thing that I love about Smyrna specifically, and I'm sure this happens in other departments as well. I just happen to be a little bit more well versed on what you guys do. I think the other thing that y'all do to help this friend of mine, for example, is that you do encourage and not just encourage, require and lead by example with the positive interactions outside of, meet that person before you ever have to write them a ticket.
That's right.
Like back to the community involvement and that kind of thing. So yeah, but
well, anyway. one thing I've tried to do, and granted I've failed in some regards in keeping up with it, but especially during the crises of George Floyd and whatever other crises that we may have had, is reaching out to the minority type churches and going in there and speaking with them and letting them know these are the options you have when you have a bad interaction. Don't call me up when your son's arrested for DUI and he's blown a .30. Right. Not a lot I can do about that. And so out of defense of our minority communities, I think that they are very well versed in what the law enforcement is there for. And at the same time, they're not going to take any abuse or mistreatment.
Well, and you've the ones in your community, you've empowered them to say, I'm going to listen.
That's right. That's right.
And that's huge,
Well, it is. And I mean, Smyrna has become a very diverse community.
Yes.
Occasionally, which I need to do it more often, I try to walk my neighborhood. And as you see the cars coming by, you can tell. I mean, there's different nationalities and different races and things of that nature. And I like it. I mean, it provides especially as a big heavyset guy, provides a lot of different food options. So anyway, but
that's important.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Variety is the spice of life, right?
I'm telling you, I can't just eat Cracker Barrel every day.
So we'll end on a positive note. What is the number one thing since you've been chief, or even since you've been in law enforcement, the number one advance, the number one whatever development that has helped law enforcement do a better job?
Well, it's computers. I mean, when I first started in law enforcement, there was no computers. If there was a computer, you could run a tag or something to that effect, but you didn't have the advantage of the computers of today that could give you crime analysis and things of that nature, and make the job just so much easier and quicker. And I think, of course, the advent of technology with the body cameras and the license plate readers and things of that nature, I think it helps our job every day and gives us the tools that we need to do a good job and to help serve our citizens.
Very good. Anything else you'd like to share with anybody? Any cool stuff coming up?
Well, I don't know about cool stuff coming up. I will say this to the listeners out there, especially the ones in Rutherford County, is understand that at one point in 2018, I was the president of the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police, and which is made up of over 1,000 members. And I mean, you need to understand there's over 600 departments that report to TBI in the state alone.
Wow.
So I heard some horror stories occasionally about police departments and sheriff's offices arguing with each other and things of that nature. I can honestly say it doesn't happen here. I'm very close friends with the sheriff, very close friends with Chief Bowen, Chief Davis, Right now, MTSU has an interim, and Kevin Williams, who's a fantastic guy to sit around and talk to, and Brent Sear up in Eagleville. So we are blessed here that we have chiefs that actually get together, we interact, and when we have a problem, we call each other. And we're there for each other. And so again, I just want the citizens of Rutherford County to know you're well protected by professional law enforcement.
I love it. I love it. Chief, I appreciate all that you do. I appreciate all that your officers do. And I'm
very blessed.
You really do make it a better place to live.
Well, thank you for that. So, and again, they deserve the credit and all that. They continue to make an old fat guy look good. So
well, and I'll tell you the last thing, if you have any issues, if there's something that you'd like to talk to Chief about, he is probably the most accessible public figure leader that I've ever known in my entire life. It's ridiculous how much he will actually stand and talk to you. I don't know how you do it. I'm busy, and you're like, I don't know.
Well, and again, I give the credit to my mom and dad. My mom and dad made sure that we got a proper education. They made sure that we heard the story of the man from Galilee, and that we were in church, and we knew how to treat people, and that we didn't mistreat people. And so I give the credit to them. They were good people, and they turned me into a decent human being.
They did a fine job. So
thank you.
Also a Blue Raider fan, just so you know. Go
exactly.
So,
go. Yeah, I am true blue.
That's right. So I love it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any real estate needs, give me a shout. If you have mortgage needs, of course, give Brian Nail a shout. If you have a story that you want to tell here on Spread the Positive, if it's just a one-time story, talk to me. I'd love to possibly have you on the podcast. If it's a recurring story and you think you'd like to do a podcast, my boy Trent over here can make anybody into a storyteller. So give him a shout, and we'll talk about that. And lastly, if you have a desire to help spread the positive, then you need to talk to us about underwriting here at Spread the Positive, and definitely show up 1 week from today, 906 Ridgely at Cedar Glade.
Yes, sir.
That's it. You got anything else, Trent?
That's it, man.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Yep, you too.
Y'all have a good rest of the week.
Thank you.